While trans and gender nonconforming women and people of color like Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, Miss Major, and many more were pivotal in organizing for LGBTQ+ rights during the Stonewall Uprising.
Favorite genre of TikTok content, crackhead history. Now it's time for Brad vs. TikTok, my daily segment where I take on the craziest ideas from the Clock app.
Pronoun of the day is slugs.
Today, this trans activist TikToker is lecturing people for not being good allies. Because they use the slogan, love is love? Let's take a listen. And thanks to a listener who pointed this TikTok out to me because I'm actually blocked by this person, so I don't think I would have otherwise seen it.
If you have used the term love is love this Pride Month or ever, please watch this video. Now, while this phrase is a beautiful and divinely true sentiment, I want you to reconsider its use as a catch-all phrase for LGBTQIA+ rights. Love is love comes from campaigns for marriage equality. It addresses the fact that all people deserve to love who they love. So it's widely used to express acceptance of all sexualities. But I don't feel this adequately expresses acceptance for trans and non-binary people. Because gender identity is not about who we love. It's about loving who we are.
Y'all, there's so much more to this video, but I just have to say one thing quick. For these trans activist types, the concept that not everything is about them is so alien. Like, they cannot imagine that people would not make every single thing about them and their identities and their perspective and what's important to them. Babe, it's not about you. Not everything is about you. The world does not revolve around non-binary people. People are allowed to have slogans or talking points that don't always specifically name and include you and your pet project and identity, especially when that pet project includes nonsensical and incoherent things like non-binary. Now, I have my own issues with the term love is love. I think it's a little too broad, but I guess love between consensual adults is love. Doesn't have the same quite ring to it, but I think I would like to clarify that before I would ever use that slogan. But again, I'm just struck by the narcissism behind these kinds of TikToks, making these petty complaints about word choice.
Under my videos speaking towards my experience as a trans person, I've noticed a lot of folks in my comments replying, love is love, or even referring to Pride Month as gay pride. This harkens back to a vast history of trans people being pushed to the side in the Pride movement.
Oh my God. How oppressed can you really be? How many real problems must you have in your life if you're actually taking the time out of your day to nitpick the phraseology that people use to support you in your comment section? You gotta be kidding me. You gotta give me a break. Now, the next part of this video is where we get into my favorite genre of TikTok content, crackhead history.
While trans and gender nonconforming women and people of color like Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, Miss Major, and many more were pivotal in organizing for LGBTQ+ rights during the Stonewall Uprising, a lot of cisgender people in our community, specifically gay men, were against trans inclusion in the movement because they felt that it would hold them back.
And so here, this trans activist has just repeated the fake history, the woke mythology that you hear a lot from people in the TQ+ activist crowd. The Stonewall Uprising and that brought about the gay rights movement, or at least kicked it into full steam, was not, in fact, led by trans women of color. The crowd that kicked off this riot and uprising was, almost although not exclusively, white gay men. The claims made here about these individuals, like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, are not true. Marsha P. wasn't at the Stonewall riot until 2 a.m., late in the night when everything important had already kicked off. It's constantly said that Marsha threw the first brick at Stonewall, but that is mythology, not history. Marsha was also a drag queen, not a transgender person, and it's not clear that Marsha ever identified as transgender. Sylvia Rivera was also not there when the Stonewall riot kicked off, and actually did not identify as transgender until much later in life. At the time, Sylvia was simply a gay man. Miss Major does appear to have been there when the riot actually kicked off, so at least a little bit of accuracy to that one, but wasn't a major leader in the uprising. All of this is woke mythology, or as I prefer to call it, crackhead history. But that's not surprising. Coming from the alphabet people, from the Wi-Fi password community, they've been doing this and spreading this nonsense for years.
A lot of cisgender people in our community, specifically gay men, were against trans inclusion in the movement because they felt that it would hold them back. And this still happens today within a huge community of folks who identify as LGB without the T. And in 2007, L and G rights leaders were willing to sacrifice protections for trans people in the 2007 Employment Non-Discrimination Act for the sake of gaining their own. This just shows how society was and is more ready to accept homosexuality before trans existence.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, that perspective that gay rights would be dragged down by the trans movement has kind of aged well. We've seen that play out in recent years, particularly as the trans movement has gone into radical territory, like advocating for biological males in women's sports or for kids doing irreversible transitions and treatments. And this complaint about the gay rights activists in 2007 who were willing to sacrifice protections for trans people, they were just being pragmatic. They thought they could get protections for sexual orientation passed into anti-discrimination law, but they thought if they included gender identity as well, they couldn't get it passed. That's just how politics works. It's piecemeal activism, taking what you can get. It's not representative of some horrific thing against the trans community. It's just being pragmatic. Something is better than nothing. And yes, my dear, homosexuality is more easily acceptable than transgenderism to many people, particularly as transgenderism has gone beyond the traditional cases of people with rare instances of gender dysphoria who just want to live as the opposite sex and gone into this territory of imaginary fake things like non-binary identity. Homosexuality is much more reasonable and coherent at the conceptual level and doesn't require anybody else to give up something, to redefine how they view sex and gender or give up their single-sex spaces or sports or other things. So of course it's more readily acceptable to more people. That's just common sense.
This exclusion, both within and without the LGBTQIA+ community, is a big reason why us trans folks are still fighting for our rights today. With now 597 anti-trans bills circling the United States, 42 have passed.
I mean, look, that's a scary sounding statistic, and if they were actually horrific bills targeting trans people, I'd be upset about that. But they get that fake number by counting legislation that restricts women's sports to people born biologically female as an anti-trans rights bill, by counting legislation that requires you to be of a certain age before doing irreversible changes to your body, by counting that as an anti-trans bill. So these statistics are meaningless because they include things that are just common sense, not inherently bigoted or hateful.
So I challenge you to consider the implications of the verbiage you are using. Do not let us trans folks fade into the background of your support and allyship. Don't just say love is love. Say love is love and protect trans lives. Then take action accordingly.
I challenge you to get thicker skin and stop nitpicking word choice and maybe find something real and serious to talk about. But that's just too much to ask, I guess.
And if you do not know how, you can sign up for my trans allyship video course at the link in my bio. Society consistently uplifts those who have the closest proximity to privilege. A pride parade is not just a big party, it is a march. We need to focus our Pride Month on lifting up those who need our support the most. As Marsha said, no pride for some of us without liberation for all of us. So let's get to it. I love you.
I gotta be honest, I don't love you. I'm not a big fan of your content, to be honest. The love is not mutual here, babe. I love how when you get to the end of one of these woke rants, there's always some sort of grift attached. And now, after this long diatribe explaining how you're problematic for something incredibly minor and irrelevant, you, if you still don't fully follow, can pay me money to educate you. Guys, didn't you know we can discover the heart of allyship for just $49.99? We can embark upon a self-reflective approach to trans and non-binary support with a 5-part video workshop series guaranteed to help you build a deeper connection with your allyship to the trans and non-binary community. Oh boy. Guys, maybe I should low-key sign up for this and then live stream it. Let me know what you think. If you'd be interested in watching me take this course and educate myself better, let me know in the comments. I can't really handle any more of this TikTok stuff in one day without incurring permanent brain damage, so do hit that like button to reward my suffering.